This session is brought to you by Botlab. Botlab is a technology firm based on Gongard. We offer executive trainings in data science and cybersecurity. We also offer technical trainings as well as data protection audits, and we provide data science as a service. So, just to get right on track, I want to introduce the speaker of the day, Todd Webb. Todd Webb is the founder of Resilient Tech and creator of the Tech Leaders Workshop, where he combines decades of experience leading technical teams with insightful models of human behavior to build the next generation of extraordinary tech leaders. When he's not in the workshop, you'll find Todd spending time with his family and two teenage boys, or cooking a new recipe from a food TV show, or reading a book about human psychology, or watching a college sporting event at his alma mater, the University of Michigan. Welcome, Todd. Feel free to start. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. And do people need to pin my screen so they can see it larger if they want to?
Yes, they can pin the screen on their side so that they can see you and see the presentation.
Excellent. Okay, just let me know if there's any trouble hearing me while we're talking.
No
So
problem.
today, I'm very honored to be here. This is super exciting for me, and thank you to Marcy for inviting me to do this talk. Really excited again to be here and very honored. We're going to be talking about choosing a technology or management career. And I'm Todd, as Marcy introduced me. I am the founder of Resilient Tech, and I've been creating this workshop called the Tech Leaders Workshop that's going to begin in June for the first time. It's based on my years of experience working at lots of different companies. I've been at big companies, small companies, places that were completely virtual, completely remote office, as well as big old companies like, at the time it was Daimler Chrysler, when Daimler and Chrysler were merged companies. So I've worked at some big places, some online internet places, etc. And for that entire time, I've always worked with tech leaders and engineers, software developers. It's the place that I love to work the most. I love the work that we do as software engineers. I love how we build things, how we're creative, how it's team oriented. And I combine that with my interest of human behavior, which is a little unique. You don't find a lot of people that are engineering leaders who really spend a lot of time understanding how human beings work and diving into the research. So that's my unique perspective, and I have so much fun sharing that with people to help them become better leaders. Get to the next slide here. My slide's not working. There we go. Okay, so when we talk about management versus technical career, one of the most important things I try to talk to people about when they're considering that decision is that it's a completely different career. It's not, when you're in a technical job and you're considering moving to management, it's like moving from accounting to sales. It's not the same job anymore, right? You're not worried about the latest technologies. You need to know those technologies. You need to ask great questions as a manager and leader, but you're going to have to learn a whole new skill set. And that's part of what this presentation is going to be about, is what are the skills and things you need to know, or how's your life going to change if you become a manager. So keep that in your head, that this is a complete career change. You're going to start almost from the beginning if you move into this, and you're going to have to learn a whole new set of skills about how human beings work. So the first thing that's really different about a management job versus a tech job is that tech jobs are flow oriented. There's a great book out there about flow. It's by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I think is how you say the author's name. If you haven't read it, it's a really great book, and it talks a lot about how we can find ourselves in those work situations where we're completely engaged in the work, and nothing else matters. It's, You don't get interrupted very much. A lot of software engineers love that mode of work. They like to have an hour or 2 or 3 where they can really focus in and really think deeply about the problem that they're trying to solve. That's flow-oriented work. It's one of the most wonderful parts of being a software developer. But guess what? If you decide to get into management, you're not going to be doing that kind of work anymore. Your work as a manager becomes interrupt driven, which means that there's constantly going to be people coming to you saying, I need this, I have this question, how should I do this? What's our decision on this thing? And that's okay, right? That's part of the work. When you're a manager or a leader and you're not developing software anymore, your job is helping the individuals on the team and the colleagues that you work with and your team itself, etc., to advance, right? To get their work done, to not be you don't want your team to be interrupted by people, but you want to help make sure that they're not being blocked. So first mental model for you is, if I'm going to be a manager, my work is going to be interrupt driven. People are going to be bothering me, coming up to me all the time, and that's okay. Also, a lot of times when people are coming up to bother you, you're going to have to decide whether that's something you should switch your attention to or not. And oftentimes the case is going to be, yes, it is. So in fact, here's an interesting thing. When I was a manager back at Groupon, I decided after a while that I wanted to get a standing desk, because people would constantly come up to me asking questions, and I found myself sitting at my desk and somebody was to my side, sort of standing up next to me asking me a question. And I hated the fact that I would be sitting there kind of constantly all day looking up at people, trying to answer their questions. So I got myself a standing desk so that I could always, when somebody came up to me, I could always turn sideways away from what I was working on, look at them face to face, show them some respect and for their time and for their question, and answer them face to face. And to me, that was a great way to be a manager, and it reflects that sort of notion that your work is interrupt driven, and you have to work that way to be successful. Sorry, my slides are slow for whatever reason. There we go. Okay. Point 2 is that when you get into a management job, you're no longer going to be focused so much on doing, right? When you're a software developer and you're working on the team, your work there is to write software, to build systems, to operate systems, to monitor systems, to put things out in the world. You're a doer and you're getting that work done. Your work as a manager isn't like that anymore. Of course, you're responsible for the software getting built. You're responsible for the systems working and functioning properly, but the main thing you're doing as a manager is influencing. You're not just working on what the team is doing, but now you're starting to influence the team itself. You're trying to help the people on the team do better work. You're trying to influence how the team is thinking about how they work as a team and how they can be better at it. You're influencing people all around the team to make sure that the context that the team is working in is one that they can be successful in. So that might mean you're trying to influence other engineering managers. It might mean you're trying to influence business people. You might be trying to influence business partners that are not part of your company, but that you're working with outside of the company. So influence, a big change for managers. I'm not a doer anymore. I'm now an influencer. A whole lot of engineering managers, when they first get their job as a manager, have trouble with this idea. If you've grown up as a software engineer and you feel like you're really good at it, it's really hard to step away from that and to say, now I'm not supposed to be writing software anymore. It's the people on my team that are supposed to be doing that. Not because I can't, but because they should be, that's their job, right? And you're supposed to be helping them have opportunities to grow. So if you're stepping in and doing all the work, they're not having the opportunity to do it. So it's a big shift. You're not doing anymore, you're now influencing, and that can be a challenge. Okay, let's see if we can get our next slide up here. Oop, there we go. Okay, third major point. When you are a software developer or a member of the team, your focus tends to be on your personal growth. And that's a good thing, right? Your personal growth is really important. One of the things that we do as software developers and systems developers is keep up with the current technology, build new skills all the time, learn the platforms and things that we're working on, learn to better wield the tools that we use in order to build things. And that's all about personal growth. It's about managing yourself and making yourself better. You're not too focused on the rest of the people on the team. Yeah, you might be helpful, right? You might look at your colleague and say, I can help you learn this new language, or I can help you learn this new technology. But that's not your primary focus when you're a software developer. When you become a manager, your primary focus now is others. It's others' growth. And in fact, I've met a lot of leaders and managers who actually the problem they have is focusing not enough on themselves. They tend to focus, if they're really good at it, they tend to focus on the people on their team, helping them level up to grow as an engineer and to learn how to do new things, and then they forget to spend time on themselves. Which again, that's natural and it's okay, but that's a struggle you're gonna have, and it's a change you're gonna make. You're gonna have to be very focused on other people, and not just people on your team. You're gonna have to be focused a lot on people that are outside your team as well. You may be a mentor to other managers around the company. You may be helping someone else understand how engineering works at the company. So there's a lot of outward focus. The picture here is of a book that's a great book, and there's another one related to it that's listed up at the top there, that's Leadership and Self-Deception. Both of those books are really fantastic books that will help you understand what I mean when I say outward mindset, and when I mean that you're focused on other people. So that's the third piece. So with those three things in mind, there's ways that you can get yourself ready. And one of the things that frustrates me a lot about the engineering profession is that we often push people into management roles before they're ready for it, or without giving them enough background that they can make a thoughtful decision about whether that's the right thing for them. Management might not be your thing, which is completely okay. Someday you could be a principal engineer, the top engineer at a big company, helping make gigantic architectural decisions, etc. That's an awesome career path, and I know some amazing people that do that job and who just don't want to manage other people. If you want to manage, that's great. But what you can do, if nobody is preparing you for that decision, is you can prepare yourself, and that's what the three-part plan is about. So part one of this plan is to know yourself. Spend some time getting to know what your strengths are, right? What are the things that you're best at? And think about, do those things fit with what a management career requires? I recommend that you use some online tools. There's one that I've used before, which is called Clifton Strengths. It's by the Gartner company. Not expensive. You can go in, and basically it's a survey that you take that asks you some questions about yourself and your preferences, and it will tell you what your preferences say about the way that you like to work and the things that you think that you're good at. So you do something like that, you look at it and you say, yeah, that looks like me, or you can have some questions about it and maybe say, well, some of this doesn't really look like me. But in any case, you're trying to understand yourself. You can also talk to your colleagues, talk to people that you respect and say, do you see me as a manager? What are my skills? What are my qualities? What are the things that I'm good at that would make me good at a management job? What are the skills and qualities that I have that would make me better at a software engineering job? And then just, again, assess it for yourself. Think for yourself about, is this a good fit for me? Should I really be in that kind of a role? Is it going to make me happy? Am I going to be happy being interrupt driven? Am I going to be happy focused on other people? All those things I talked about, right? So that's part one. Part one is know yourself and think about how that matches up with a management job. Let's get next slide here. There we go. Okay, part two, get some experience and learn from others. So you can start trying being a leader and manager. And there's ways that you can do that. One way that I suggest doing that is to talk with your supervisor and say, hey, I'm thinking about whether I want to be a manager or not, but I don't want to dive into it head first right now. I want I want to get a feel for what it feels like. Ask them to set up a task for you or a responsibility that you can take ownership of, but you're not allowed to do the work. This is the key part. So define a project, task, whatever, and say, agree with your manager that you're not going to be doing the work, but you have to get it done by influencing other people. And you can tell the team that as well. So if they're working with the team, tell people on the team, we've given Todd responsibility for this project. I've asked Todd not to do any of the development work. He's trying to experience what it's like to be a leader and manager. And a key part of that is to be a good influencer and a good leader. And so as a team, don't let Todd do the work, but make sure that he's trying to be a good leader and a good manager and understanding how to influence both inside and outside of the team. That is a great way to try it out, right? Because now you're going to get a sense for what it's like to try and accomplish something without being able to have your hands on the keyboard and get it done yourself, right? Now, another way to learn from others and get experience is just through mentorship. Find people that you are, that impress you, people that you want to be like, people who are good managers already, and ask them to spend some time with you. Ask them to walk through projects that they've worked on or challenges that they've had and how they approach those things. You can learn a ton from just asking great questions of people that you respect and people that you want to be like, and people that you're considering having a job like theirs. So those are two ways. Figure out projects that you can work on where you can be responsible and you have to get the work done through influencing. And second of all, find people you respect and set up a mentoring relationship so that you can start to ask them great questions and figure out and learn things from them, okay? Next slide here. Oops, every time it goes to the next spot too fast. Okay, part 3. Develop management skills. So you can learn a lot of stuff on your own. There are lots of online workshops. When we all get back to being in offices and things more, you'll be able to get out and do classes with each other, that kind of thing. If you don't have classes that you can go to, here are 3 books that you can read on your own to learn some things for yourself. So you can start learning about and developing your own management skills just by reading or getting online or doing things yourself. So the 3 books are Peopleware. Peopleware is a classic. It's been around for a very long time. It specifically talks about how to lead and manage software engineering teams. So it's not a general management book. It speaks directly to the kind of challenges that you have as software engineers and software developers and systems people. So highly recommended. Check it out, read it, and talk about it with somebody. Again, find that mentor, somebody that you respect, and talk about that book with them. Another book that is a general book is called The First 90 Days. It's a great book to help you understand what it would be like if you stepped into that job, that management job the first time, and how you would prepare yourself over the first 90 days to do a good job. Again, it'll give you a good sense for what that's going to be like, what that transition is going to be like, and how you would be prepared for it. Then the third book is called Leadership and Self-Deception. This is that other book that based on the one that I showed you earlier, Outward Mindset. Leadership and Self-Deception is a book, it's a parable. It's a really easy book to read. It's a story, but it tells you a lot about how to have that outward mindset, how to start focusing on others and the growth and development of others and accomplishing things through others. That I think is, frankly, I think this book is one of those life-changing books, and I highly recommend it to almost everybody that I talk to about leadership and about management and what that role means in the world. So those 3 books, great books for you to check out and to start learning some things on your own. Let's see if I can get the next slide now. Oops. All right, so here was your 3-part plan. Know yourself, get some experience and learn from others, and start developing your management skills now. Start figuring out the things that you need to learn now and start developing those skills. If you like learning those things, you're going to, it's possible that management might be a really great career for you. If you're trying to learn those things on your own and you just don't have the energy for it and it just doesn't seem interesting, maybe software development, the technology career path is the way for you to go. Both are completely valid, and we need both to have amazing organizations. So I'd encourage you to try these things, and that'll get you better prepared to make that technology versus management career decision. So that's it. That's all I have for the presentation bit of this, and I hope that we're going to have a great discussion here as well. You can find me online. Please connect with me online. I'd love to see you all. You can find me on LinkedIn at Todd Webb. You can find me at resilient.tech on Instagram. You can find me at twebb on Twitter. Find me online. Let's connect. I would love to see you there. So I think, Marcy, let's get into some questions and start just talking about, what's on your mind. What are you thinking about when you're thinking about this technology versus management career path?
Okay, so thank you so much, Todd, for the presentation. So maybe we can start with a question about delegation. How to delegate after promotion. Once you have been promoted, and usually maybe you are in a team of techies. So how do you maneuver working with the same people? How do you learn to delegate to them? And these are people you are working with. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And almost everybody who's considering being a manager has asked me that question. It's, well, these people are my friends. People say to me that they're my friends now, and are they not going to be my friends anymore if I become a manager? And how am I going to manage this? My response to that is this. In order to be a great leader and manager, part of your job is to provide tough feedback and to help people grow. And here's if I don't know how many of you all are parents. I'm a parent. I have 2 teenage boys. I don't have a problem with giving my teenage boys feedback. I don't have a problem with being tough on them. In fact, I'm probably tougher on my teenagers than I am on most of the people in my life. It's because I love them and I want them to be amazing human beings, right? So take a look around you at the people that are on your team today and ask yourself, do I care about these people? Do I really, really, truly want them to be amazing engineers, human beings, leaders, etc.? And if I do, then why would I hold back on giving them great feedback, right? I think we know when we're talking with our friends or with our managers or leaders, we know when they care about us. We can feel it in the way that they talk to us and the relationship that they build with us, etc. So delegation, when you become a manager, especially if the people on your team that you're managing were your friends or you consider them to be your friends before, it doesn't have to be a difficult thing. It can be an expression of how much you care about that person and how much you want that person to grow and be amazing. So think of it that way. It's a mental model, right? It's a different way of thinking about it. And sometimes are people going to get frustrated if you give them feedback that they don't like? Yeah, sure. Like, my teenagers don't always love some of the things I have to say to them, but they never question whether I love them. They never question that I care about them and that I want them to be successful. And that's where it comes from. It comes from the heart. So I think you can take the same approach when you become a leader and a manager. Do it from the heart. Do it because you care, and it'll work. It'll work out just fine.
Okay. Then the other question is about soft skills. What are those soft skills that someone needs to build on once they become a manager? Or if they want to become a manager, what are those soft skills that they need to build on?
Sure. There are a lot of those, and let's just pick some out. Speaking, presenting, being in front of people and presenting your ideas is really, really important. That means spending some time with mentors, for example, and having them critique how you talk in front of folks, or even having your team do that. You can ask your team. Here's an interesting thing to know about when you become a manager. If you're a genuinely great human being and you're really trying and you truly from the heart want your people to be successful and your team to be successful, when you become a manager, they're going to want you to be successful too. And you should have that level of trust. And so you should be able to get in front of your team and say, hey, I know in order for me to do a good job for you, I need to be a good speaker. I need to be good at talking to people and influencing people. When I'm talking with you, if you feel like I'm not doing a good job, when we're talking in our one-on-ones or outside of these meetings, come tell me what I could be doing better. Hey, Todd, you stick your hands in your pockets a lot. That's not really, a great way to present. Or you stutter a lot, or you use the word a lot, or whatever it is, or you don't look at us enough when you're talking. All these things are things that there's subtle little things about communication. So that, again, my message to that is, my first message is communication skills, presenting skills, super important from a soft skills standpoint. What else? Soft skills. Certainly good writing. I'm coming back to a lot of communication things, and a lot of sort of, and that kind of is a great umbrella for a lot of other things, like having good one-on-one meetings, right? So one of the things you need to get good at is giving feedback in one-on-one meetings with your team. When you're sitting in a room with them or online talking with them and saying, hey, here are some things I think that will help you level up and get to and grow in your career. Getting good at that, super, super important. But I think most of the soft skills things come back to communication. And okay, another one is sort of your emotional resilience, right? And being able to control your emotional reactions to things. There's always big challenges that come across our desks as managers and leaders. So being able to understand how that's going to affect you emotionally and how to control your emotions and to turn those into positive things, even when you're frustrated, or maybe something makes you angry, or those sorts of things, being able to control that and display the things that are going to help your team move forward. Those are important things as well.
Okay. Another question is, does it mean that, hold up. Does it mean that technical departments should be managed by non-technical managers?
Oh, good question. No, I don't think you have to be non-technical, but I think that as you become a manager, especially as you start to advance, so as a frontline manager, you still need to know a lot of the technology, not because you're hands-on and because you're doing it, but because you need to ask good questions, right? A software engineer or a systems person can smell somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about from a mile away. I hope you're all smiling because you know this is true, right? The minute somebody walks into the room who doesn't know something about technology, you can tell immediately, because they start using strange language and they clearly don't understand what they're talking about, and then you lose respect for them. So to maintain some level of respect with you and your team, yeah, you need to understand technology. You're probably not going to be hands-on, but you need to ask great questions as you advance. So after a while, maybe you're going to be a manager of managers. Maybe you're sort of a senior manager or a director level person. You're middle management, and you are now managing managers. And your job there is to teach them to be really good at management, right? At managing technical people. Now, do you need to know technology to do that? You still need to know some good stuff, right? You still need to ask great questions. As you advance toward that CTO role or that VP of engineering role, your job is still to ask really good questions, right? You cannot lose that ability to ask, well, have you thought about this? How are you handling security? How are you handling latency with the website? Have you considered these things? Who have you talked, if you're not asking really good, insightful technology questions, you're going to lose your team. You're going to lose your people. They're just not going to trust in you. So no, I wouldn't put somebody completely non-technical in a management role. But your focus is no longer on having your fingers on the keyboard. Your focus is on asking really great questions. I hope that answers the question.
Then another question is, if you have come from a certain technical specialization and want to change jobs to management, but probably land on a company where the technical specialization is different, how do you get the confidence to manage such a team?
Here's a good way to think about it. In order for you to build the technical skills of the specialization that you had before, you had to be good at learning, right? I mean, it's part of our profession. Our profession is changing every day. Like there's some new platform, there's some new technology always coming along, and part of your skill at being good at this profession is your learning ability. How fast can you go learn some new things? So my mental model in that world would be, I can learn it and I should learn it. So let me tell you like a quick story, for example. When I was at Groupon, my engineering, for a while there, I was a product manager, and for a while there, I was an engineering manager, and I had various roles at Groupon. I was there for 7.5 years. My team at one point decided to, we were using Ruby on Rails for most of our systems that we were building, but the team decided at one point that we would benefit from using a different platform for some of the back end, very data processing heavy work that we needed to do. And so the team decided to choose a new technology, one that I had never used before. I was familiar with Ruby. I could read Ruby. I could write some Ruby. I was familiar with Rails. But this was a brand new language I had never used before. It was called Clojure. Clojure is a Lisp language, really different functional style language. If you haven't been exposed to it, check it out because it's interesting. It's going to change how you think about software development. I'd never done any Lisp development before. I'd never seen Clojure before. I spent my personal time as a leader learning enough Clojure through self-study that I could ask good questions, right? And so I think that's the approach. The approach should always be, I'm good at learning. I can learn new technologies. It's not hard for me. I'm really good at it. It's part of the reason that I'm in this profession. And if I go into a new context with new technologies, one of the first things I'm going to do is start learning enough that I can ask good questions.
The other question is about, there are two questions intertwined in one. How best can business intelligence be applied as a manager? And the other question is also, how do we handle or apply emotional intelligence at the same level?
Can you say that last question one more time? How do we apply emotional intelligence at the what level?
At the same level.
Oh, at the same level. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So applying business intelligence, I'm not sure if that's just a practical question about how do you learn that or use, or is that a question? I would ask that person if they can clarify what the question was about, if that's about understanding how the business works, or if that's really about applying a particular technology like data science in an engineering leadership role. I would probably answer it a little differently. So if they can chat an answer to that, that'll be helpful. Emotional intelligence and how does that apply? I touched on that a little bit earlier. I think, again, it's about a big part of you being a good leader and manager is about how do you manage your emotions. And we all get frustrated. I mean, the technical world is one that is, has a non-ending stream of things that can be frustrating, and then having to deal with business colleagues who really don't understand how engineering works can be frustrating. Problems that come along that somebody else creates can be maddening sometimes, etc. So I think that idea of being aware of your emotions and how you're feeling at a given moment, and whether you're exposing that to the world or not, or whether you have good mechanisms to deal with it, is a really important skill to have. It's also important because it's, as a leader and a manager, again, because you're outward focused, you're focused on other people, you're going to be paying a lot more attention. Hopefully, you're going to be paying a lot more attention to the people on your team than you ever have before. You're going to be watching how they talk. You're going to be watching how they interact with each other. You're going to be observing their body language if you're with them in an office. And you're going to need to be able to react to those things, right? So here's an example would be, if you're sitting in a meeting with a bunch of your team and you're talking about some issue or some architectural decision or whatever, when you're watching that team interact and talk about the issue, you may notice, or you should notice, and this is again is emotional intelligence. You should notice when people get a look on their face, like if somebody in the team says, "I think we should go in direction Y," and another person on the team kind of goes, and you see their face. They don't say anything, but you see their face, or you see their shoulders move, or something about the way they're reacting. You know that that's a reflection of some emotional, something going on for that person. And your job as a leader and manager is to bring that out. Your job from an emotional intelligence standpoint is to identify that, and then say to that person, hey, it seems like you're not really on board with that. Like, what are you thinking? Right? So it's your job to kind of draw those things out. Hope that kind of answers some of the emotional intelligence question, and we can go more into that if you have more questions about it. Do you have did they clarify what they meant by the business intelligence question?
Not yet, but we have more questions. In other words, if you have to manage a team that entails, or rather that deals with a technical area that you don't have in-depth knowledge on, how do you
Mhm.
ensure you're confident to understand what they do?
Check with them. Again, I think I hope that when you take over a team like that you do it with some level of humility, right? When you're there for a reason. Obviously, if you're given responsibility for managing a team, it's because of some level of skills that you have, and probably people skills, right? It's about you've been given that role hopefully because you are a good leader, or you've demonstrated some good leadership skills. But that along with that comes humility. And so I hope you walk up with your team the first time and you say, look, I don't understand everything that you all work on, and I need to learn it. And I'm going to put in the time and the effort and the work to learn it. And that's going to mean a couple of things. It's going to be self-study. It might mean that you're looking at the systems and the technology, reading the code, some of that stuff on your own. And it might mean you're spending some time with the team. You may tell the team, I'm going to schedule some time with you when I'm going to go over some questions that I have about how some of our stuff works. Or I might ask a more junior level of the team, a junior level person on the team to get in front of a whiteboard for me and diagram how things work. Partly because it's a great experience for that young person, that new person, to practice communicating technical ideas, which is an important skill for them to have in order to level up anyway. And it's a great way for them to teach you some things about the systems and the things that team is responsible for. So I think, yeah, again, the message is go in with some humility, know that you're going to put some effort in on your own to learn things, and trust that your team, if you engage them and say, I need your help to get to where I need to be, because they want you to be representing them well. They want you to be asking good questions and helping them think through things, and you can only do that if you learn the stuff that they're working on. Nobody is expecting you to walk in and sort of just automatically know everything that team does. It's insane. Nobody believes that that's true. If a new engineer joined your team, you would not expect them to know everything that team does. They're not expecting that of you as a leader either. So as long as you have humility and you walk into it that way, I think you're going to find some success. I hope that answers that question.
The next question is, if you're in a team, how do you grow and plan yourself to take up any arising managerial role without coming across as competitive?
If you mean competitive with other managers, here's a good way to think about that. Again, I think that hopefully as an organization, we're all trying, I hope that we have a culture in any good organization where we're all trying to learn and get better at our jobs. That means that the people that are on your level, so if you're a manager and you've got a bunch of managers who are your peers at that company, those are the people you presumably would be competing with for that next level promotion, etc. I would be trying to encourage amongst my peers of managers a culture of learning from and teaching each other. We all want to be good at our jobs. There's nothing bad for the company for every single manager to be prepared to take on next level responsibility. Like that should be the goal. That's going to make us an amazing organization. So I think if I was in that role, like if I was in a first level management role and I was worried that people were going to think that I'm just trying to be competitive, I would be trying to be a giver. I would be out there saying, hey, how can I help you level up? How can I help you learn new skills? And can you teach me some things too? Because I want to learn things. So if you're out there and you're being a giver, and you're sharing your experience, and you're sharing your skills, and you're asking for, with humility, you're asking other people to share what they know with you, I think then you're contributing to a culture of mutual learning and growth that's good for the whole company. And then, and nobody's, everybody knows that some people are going to get promoted and some people aren't. I mean, ultimately, there's only so many director level jobs and there's only so many CTO jobs. But for me, when I'm talking with those peers, they know that I'm partly there for them to be successful. And if they don't get the director job or I don't get the director job at the next level, I still want them to be prepared to go out and take that job at some other company. Like we're still going to be friends. Even if I don't work at this company anymore, we're still going to be colleagues and friends. And I hope that everybody that I've worked with goes out and either gets a job of leadership in this current company or goes out to some other company and takes a leadership role. I would be so proud as a colleague of people if the people that I worked with and I learned from and who learned from me went out and became leaders and CTOs someday at other companies. That would make me so proud. So I think an element of it is just having a different mental model about competition versus mutual growth. And I think that's what helps you, get away from that idea of competitiveness, that's just not productive for any organization, I think.
Okay. So the question about business intelligence. So he asks, how best can I apply business intelligence in regards to positioning or pitching business ideas to all parties concerned? That's directors, managers, and colleagues alike.
Yeah, so I think the question seems aligned with sort of influencing and being a part of the discussion of the company, which is a great question. One of the things that I run into when I'm coaching CTOs, which I've done around Chicago a lot. That's where I live. It's just outside of Chicago, Illinois. A big complaint for CTO level folks here in the United States is that they don't feel like they have a seat at the table. They don't feel like the CEO and the other C-level executives feel like they are contributors to the business. So the question is excellent, and I think it's about how do I use the things that are at my fingertips to become a contributing member of the business and influence people across the business. My response to that is to keep asking really great questions. I think that's how you gain respect as a technical leader and how you get a seat at the table when it comes to making business decisions and influencing strategically where the company is going. I think you're very lucky if you have business intelligence tools at your fingertips and you understand the data and you can get interesting and useful information out of it. The way that I would approach having that level of influence and getting that level of respect from the business side colleagues is asking them really, really good, insightful questions based on the business intelligence information that I have, right? If you ask them a question and they look back at you and go, wow, I never really thought about that before. That's a really good question. What do you know? And then you can share some of the data that you have. Now, you've established that you've got something. You've got some insights that are useful and meaningful and are going to help the company make good decisions. So it's not about you walking into it with all the answers. I think that's oftentimes the mental model that people have about sort of proficiency and being good at their job and being respected and sort of contributing to the company. They think it's all about having the answers. It's not. It's not about having the answers. The world is changing too fast for that to be meaningful. Obviously, you need to have some skill, some some things you're good at, but really what makes a great teammate and a great contributor to the business is somebody who asks really insightful questions and gets everybody else in the room thinking differently about the problems so that you can come up with really cool, unique solutions.
Okay. Maybe to also add to that, what worked for me was some of the problematic challenges that we had in the business was showcasing how data was helping solve or helping us think differently. So I found progressively me showcasing how different challenges that affected our unit or our business. For example, if we needed to add more bandwidth, the best justification was always using cacti graphs. So I would always use how different units are maxing out on the allocations we currently have, and it would make the management think differently about the allocations that they currently had in place. So sometimes it could be using a particular problem, and sometimes using the data sets that you currently have to bring out impact out of it. It's not really making sure that they make the decision the way you want it to be, but it's about them seeing the value of the data that you're actually putting out there. That really worked for me. So the other question is about how do you encourage interaction within units, especially when there's, techies sometimes have internal competitions or
Mm-hmm.
they have learning challenges. They do not want to share certain resources or do
Mm-hmm.
not want to share learning. As a manager, how would you encourage interaction between team members?
Good question. Yes, and I see this a lot, right? They're definitely, as a manager and a leader, one of the important things you need to do is manage those relationships with other teams, and help those relationships and those interactions be positive and effective and productive, right? You don't benefit from having bad relationships with other teams. So I think sometimes managers and leaders can be part of that problem, unfortunately, if they're protective or those kinds of things. But I think that's part of that has to do with your mental model for how the organization is going to be effective. Some tactics that I've used are pretty simple ones, which is spend time together. Offer one of the people from your team every once in a while to go work side by side with someone on that other team, for an hour or two or whatever, just helping them out. Offering once in a while, hey, can we help you out? We would really benefit from learning a little bit about how you see the world, and the kind of problems that you're facing. Can I send Marcy over? Can she work with your team for half a day this week? And that just establishes relationships, right? It's really about human relationships and about making those connections and starting to see things through somebody else's eyes. The more you can do that with different units, either other engineering teams or even business units, that can be super helpful. A story that I can tell about that is that my team at Groupon was responsible for financial systems. We were building out the platform that paid merchants all over the world for the money that we owed them as a company. And we worked heavily with the accounting team, not engineers, right? They're people who do accounting every day. And one of the things that my team did was every once in a while we would spend a few hours. Everybody in the team would spend a few hours, a couple hours with those accountants, seeing the kinds of problems that they were dealing with, watching how they do their work, watching how they use the tools that we built, the kinds of things that were frustrating to them, that sort of stuff. And we just established relationships. We didn't go in like trying to fix every problem that they had. We just were going in there to understand their world so that when they did come back with a problem, we knew each other. It wasn't just somebody throwing a problem over the wall and saying, why aren't you fixing this? It was somebody who was a friend of ours, who we wanted to be successful, who was saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can you help me understand it? And so I think people are just much more kind and much more sort of giving to each other when they get to know each other. So that's my primary way to approach managing those relationships, is to make sure people start spending time together and get to know each other and start to understand the sorts of problems each other are having.
Okay. So the last question is about as a manager, you are probably, maybe you're an IT manager and you're now responsible for cybersecurity teams, networks, and data science teams. but maybe you came from the programming or software engineering department. How do you make sure that you influence and empower the other units that you used to work with, but on a dotted line, and have influence in such a way that you get respect out of it? Because sometimes when they know you were not very good at certain units and you're from a particular specialization, sometimes it's human nature sometimes that they will look down upon you as a manager. So how would you be able to work around it?
I think I'll continue with that same theme, which, and it really is this simple. I mean, at least from my perspective, my mental model of this is pretty straightforward, which is be humble. I think that, and I know that sounds simple, and I know that it's not easy, right? I think we build up sort of these fears about sort of exposing our ignorance, for example, or our fears about lacking influence or not being able to do our job or people disrespecting us or whatever. But at the end of the day, what I think we all know, what we respect in other human beings is when they're humble and when they come in and say, hey, I have a lot to learn here. Like, I have things to share too. So if you're giving and you're humble and you walk into whatever situation that is and say, I have things to learn here, I also have some things to share, things that I've learned that are maybe more. So, for example, if you're taking over, this example is taking over sort of an IT group when you've been responsible for software development in the past. Obviously, you have some things to learn. You need to learn some things about how IT works. It's not the same thing as software development, but you know a lot about how software development works. So when that IT team is frustrated, is asking questions about, like, why are the engineers doing this? And why do they keep asking us for this, that, and the other thing? And how come they won't listen to, how come they won't respond when we want them to implement this, this security concern because our systems aren't safe? Why are they, ignoring us? You're in a unique position to provide that perspective and say, well, let me tell you about what the life of a software engineer is like and why they might not be focused on the thing that you're focused on here. And let me also explain to you how you might approach it differently to get their attention and to get their respect. So you bring what you bring to the table to be in your giving of that when you take over that group that you're not familiar with, and you're humble in the sense that you say, I know I don't know how this all works, and you're all going to have to teach me. Like, I know how to be a good leader, but I don't necessarily know how IT works. I know how software development works, but I don't know how IT works. So you're going to have to help me get there. If I'm going to ask you good questions, you're going to have to help me understand what I need to understand in order to ask really great questions. I know it sounds simple, and I know it's not, but but I think that's the guiding principle. The guiding principle is humility and giving.
Okay. Thank you so much, Todd. Maybe you can close with telling us some of the tools that you used that helped you maybe manage teams, manage communications, increase interaction within particular teams. Now that you've told us about the, actually, I did it. I did the Clifton Strengths Finder like
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've done the Myers-Briggs test, and usually when I recruit, I like people taking those tests because it helps me understand them at a better detail, so that you know the personality and the character of someone who you're working with, so that as you work, you totally understand how they would work, how they respond to certain issues. Because sometimes you would end up being a very effective manager if you understood the outlook of someone. So, what are those tools as we close? What are those tools that you'd want to maybe mention that would help with interaction,
Mm-hmm.
communication, uh, such things?
Really good question. First, I want to make one statement about the personality tests, things like Myers-Briggs and Clifton Strengths, etc. One of the things that's really important to understand from a mental model standpoint is those tools are for the individual, and any interpretation of those tools should be only done by the individual. So if you take Clifton Strengths and you get results from it, I would not probably hand those to somebody else. What I would do is I would read those myself, and I would say to myself, does that sound like me? Is this a good representation of me? And if it is, does it help me explain myself to my coworkers, to my managers, etc., and what I'm really good at, and the same thing is true for Myers-Briggs and all these other things. I would never. Those things are tools of. I think of those things as mirrors. They're good mirrors for you to look into and say, does this reflect me? And then helping you to express to yourself or express to other people what's special about you, what special skills you bring, and what things make you happy, and what things you don't love, etc. Versus just handing them off to somebody else and letting them interpret, because it's just not, it's not what they're for. They'll be more effective the other way. From a tools standpoint, I don't focus a lot on tools. Tools can be more of a, and when I'm thinking of tools, I'm thinking of things like just the ways that we communicate with each other, like email and chat and using video conferences like this, or being face-to-face in a meeting, etc. I don't think a lot about the tools other than how they inhibit us. Almost every tool that we use, like email, chat, etc., from my perspective, is less than optimal. And optimal is me standing face to face with you and seeing your facial expressions and feeling your presence as a human being right there with me. That is the best possible communication that I can have with someone, and anything that's in between that, be that email or chat or video conference, etc., is just is less good. So I tend to think of those communication tools in that way. Trying to think of some other good things you can use.
Slack
is fine. Again, it's a chat tool, and it can be bad, right? Like I think it's a source of interruptions, right? And so I think as a lead, here's what I would say about those kinds of tools. As a leader and manager, look at that tool and think for yourself about whether that's actually helping people do better work or whether it's not. I think something like Slack, it can be good for sort of chatter, sort of like, and what I mean by that is like a lot of non-work kind of stuff, like, hey, what are you getting for lunch? Hey, I'm going to watch the soccer game this weekend. My kid just got graduated from school, whatever that is. For establishing relationships and kind of, especially when you're not face to face all the time, I'm okay with that. If you are trying to solve an immediate acute problem, like the site's down, right? Like the website's down, and I'm trying to triage what's going on, and I have sort of a group of people that are very focused on figuring out the problem and sharing some things back and forth. That's sort of a real-time communication situation. Then I like things like Slack, right? Because then the messaging is going back and forth really quickly, and people are able to watch, right? One of the problems with email is that nobody can watch it, right? Like if you're not in the email list, you can't see it. But when you're in a Slack channel, and let's say there's 5 people that are troubleshooting some problem with the website, other people can sort of be gathered around and sort of watching what's going on with those 5 people that are trying to solve the problem, and they can, if they have some insight, they can offer that, right? So there's elements of Slack that are good in certain situations. I don't think Slack is good in every situation. I think as a leader and manager, it's good for you to have an opinion about that and to nudge people in a better direction. So if somebody should be meeting with another person, but they're slacking, they're sending Slack messages to them all the time, I think as a leader and manager, like, you pull that person aside and you say, hey, shouldn't you just go over to that person's desk, or shouldn't you just call that person, or shouldn't you just, you'd be a lot more effective if you just talk to that person face to face. You keep sending these messages back and forth and you're not getting anywhere, right? It's not good communication. So hopefully that answers the question about things like Slack. I think just be thoughtful. Study how human beings work. Study how communication happens. Have an opinion about what's effective and what's not, and nudge people in a different direction. Don't just assume that because the tools are there that they're being used well or properly. What other tools are interesting? Yeah, otherwise I don't think of a lot of tools. Like, I really don't. I think a lot more about human relationships and just about how to get people to understand each other better.
Okay.
I like a lot of, lately I like a lot of written communication for things like, for example, for architectural decisions, things like that. I think oftentimes, this is another sort of point about people. There are people certainly in your organization who think fast and are loud and they talk a lot, and there's other people in your organization who are on the other end of the spectrum who are really quiet, very thoughtful, and they take time. They take time to think through things. Well, sometimes as a team, we're making decisions that are really conducive to the person who's loud and fast and whatever, and we're missing the input of those people that are quiet and thoughtful and slower. Not slower because they're not intelligent, but slower because they're thoughtful and they need time to kind of let ideas percolate a bit. So again, as a leader manager, look at the mediums that you're using for communicating or for making decisions and think to yourself, is this really engaging everybody on the team? And so that's why I say I like written documentation, written things for sort of big, important decisions, because it forces the people who are really loud and sort of fast to slow down a bit and really think through what they're suggesting. And it also gives those people that are more thoughtful, slower thinking, it gives them a way to participate and produce ideas and contribute that's not overwhelming to them. And then you get better ideas, right? You get better output from the team from a decision standpoint by doing those sorts of things.
Okay. Thank you so much, Todd.
Yeah.
We've had a fruitful discussion. So as we close on Saturday, we'll have the last session on this series. It's going to be about building a versatile career in tech. It's going to be about Caroline Muthamburi. She works for Google in Switzerland. She'll be answering different types of questions. So if you're interested, you can check out the details on any of our social media pages, Botlab, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely night. Good night.